Welcome to Healing Wisdom, a Thursday morning talk show featuring guests sharing their stories and knowledge. We discuss the healing aspects of the arts, metaphysics, social justice, and adventure through all types of terrain. So join me, Pandora Peoples, here on WOMR 92.1 FM in Provincetown and WFMR 91.3 FM in Orleans. We're streaming worldwide at WOMR.org. Hello out there. I'm so pleased to be speaking with medical herbalist and author Stephen Brown. He's the owner of Great Cape Herbs, Cape Cod's oldest apothecary. And today we're talking about treating Lyme, sleep deprivation, and how to improve your sleep, the medicinal properties of Ginkgo. And we're also talking about breathing easy this fall and winter. Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So, you are a fantastic formulator of tinctures and teas and have a plethora of formulations for all kinds of illness and diseases and conditions. So let's start off talking about Lyme. It's a big issue on Cape Cod and the East Coast. It seems like there's been more of an acceptance of this idea of chronic Lyme disease. So can you talk about the use of herbs in those cases?
Lyme disease has just taken over the Northeast, and especially Cape Cod, and especially Nantucket. God, I think 1 in 4 people have Lyme out in Nantucket. It's just everywhere. But as everyone knows, medical health information evolves over time. Penicillin came along, we thought it was the greatest thing in the world and it would last forever. No, they had to keep developing more and more different kinds of antibiotics, more and more kinds of medicines. So I base my protocol around a brilliant herbalist named Stephen Buhner, Buhner, who wrote the book Healing Lyme. And I think his great uncle was the Surgeon General of the U.S. at one time, and his father was a medical doctor. And this guy was just brilliant. He passed away 2-3 years ago, I guess now. He wrote that book Healing Lyme, and it is amazing. The amount of research that he did, bringing things right up to speed, right up to the present time, and what he describes it as old Lyme thinking and new Lyme thinking. So in old Lyme thinking, we all thought it was the white-footed mouse and the white-tailed deer and blah, blah, blah. And that was how Lyme spread. And we should go out and kill all the ticks and white-footed mice and get the deer out of our yards. And absolutely wrong thinking after the experience of the past 20 years. Stephen is saying from his research that Lyme is carried by all creatures, birds, mice, squirrels, rabbits, you name it, and can be transmitted through all body fluids. It's not just a blood thing. You have to get tainted blood put into you to be able to get it. No, it can be transmitted in multitudes of ways. So it's really hard to, just like the flus that have been going around and are coming, that we don't have defense for, it's almost impossible to defend against Lyme disease. He even said that when people say, well, I can't go walk in my lawn, I can't go walk in the woods, but I'm safe if I'm in the city. And Buhner is saying that, no, you're not. Because cities warm up faster than the country soil and land, and the spirochetes like that, and it helps them get through the winters more. So you're as likely to get Lyme in the middle of Boston as you are down on Cape Cod walking through a field. So what do you do? My humble opinion is that you take, and I do it, I take continuously the formula that I put together of Stephen Buhner's. I call it Lyme 2, number 2. And in it are some very bitter herbs because spirochetes hate bitter. So if you make your blood bitter, perhaps spirochetes or bacteria will decide this isn't a good place to live. And there is the crux of herbal medicine. It takes two things for there to be an imbalance, for there to be a disease, a health issue. One is a pathogenic influence. A pathogenic influence in Chinese medicine is hot, cold, dry, wet, and wind. But we add to that bugs, right? So the medical profession in the Western world all want to focus on bugs. Kill the bug, kill the bug, kill the bug, and the disease will go away. Well, no, because the second half of the equation is making the body an inhospitable environment for that pathogen. And the medical people have no clue about how to do that. That, of course, is excellent nutrition and some of the herbal medicines that will discourage the spirochetes or bacteria from inhabiting your body. So, just about every day, I take a little swig or two on my bottle of Lyme 2, even though when I got bitten, it was, oh my God, it was 2009 or 10, I think. So what's that, 14 years now? When I first got bitten, and I remember it. I remember the day for a week, I had felt this discomfort on my hip, like on the outside of my thigh, and I kept looking and looking as closely as I could, and I could not see a single trace of a bite or a mark or anything. And then about the eighth day, I'm in the shower, showering up, and I'm look down on my hip, and there's this big purple welt. I said, "Oh boy, I got it." And I remember it was that day or the day after that was my first divorce hearing over in Barnstable, which you're depressed for anyway. And between the spirochete, the Lyme disease and what it does to your psyche and your energy and the divorce, I was pretty wiped out. But I do remember I went down to Brewster Medical, my friend Jimmy Woods down there, who is part of my family practically. And I got my 30-day course of doxycycline because I do believe that the antibiotics are very effective if you catch this early. So I did my 30 days of doxycycline, immediately started taking the Lyme formula, and in 4 days, I counted 4 days, my symptoms were gone. And I kept on the doxycycline, kept on the Lyme formula, and had it pretty well beat. And it was 5 or 6 years later that I did feel real pain in my knees and shins, thinking that it was now reemerging because I'm not sure we ever get rid of Lyme or COVID. We may be harboring them, and in times of weakness, they emerge, and we need to start dealing with that again. So I feel like I've been pretty Lyme free since then, but I will tell you that I continue to take this because the health benefits of the herbs in there, especially for cardiovascular, and I'm undergoing tests right now for some valve and whatnot issues with my heart. But it's so good for cardiovascular, it's good for your immunity, it's good for inflammations, it's good for pain, joint pain especially. It's just so, and it's very, very bitter. And what Americans, probably more than anyone in the world, need most is bitter. We are so inundated with sweet and high fructose corn syrup and refined white
Mhm.
sugar and the
Yeah,
consequent diabetes and the obesity and whatnot. We need bitter. So,
absolutely. It stimulates the digestive system, and
yes,
the herbs right into like in a capsule form isn't the same because you don't get all of that salivation and mastication that are part of the process.
yes,
But the esophagus helps with the digestive system too, and all of that bitter medicine that is antifungal and antibacterial and all the antivirals. We need that taste, and everyone
yes,
has such an aversion to it, but it is actually the best medicine. Bitter is better is a really good
absolutely.
motto.
Yep. And that brings up the bitter what's called a bitter reflex response. The second your tongue experiences bitter, it sends a message shoo, right up to the brain, right down to the gut, and to the gallbladder, and you start secreting bile and digestive juices and getting ready for the food to come down. That's why you do bitters a little bit before your meals, to get the body ready for that food to come down and be digested. But yes, I always tell people when they do their teas and tinctures, I said, I prefer for you to do this under the tongue, where the capillaries are close to the surface and readily absorbed, and to experience your herbs. And as you're taking them, to imagine in your mind's eye that they're having their healing effect on you. I think it greatly enhances the healing abilities of that formula and those herbs. And if you absolutely can't take it, then put it in some juice, pineapple juice, apple juice, whatever, chug it down. But like you say, I encourage people to experience their herbs, and especially bitter.
Yes, absolutely. So important because it's the piece that we've really lost. And how we evolved as people, as we would move through our world on a daily basis, moving from one place to another, we would be around plants and we would continually help our digestive system by eating these bitter things. Because a lot of times people's digestive system is out of whack and they're not going regularly, or their body has taken in bacteria and viruses that they're not processing. Sometimes people get diarrhea when they eat something bitter or something that is really good for them. And they need to realize that it's just make peace with the release, because it is how we keep our bodies naturally in check. And it's an alternative to fasting, or it can be used with it, but the herbs really help. We have to realize that our bodies are out of balance if we're eating anything that's processed. And so if the herbs help us come back into balance. So
it's a wasteland. This country's a wasteland of food, poisoned food. I mean, you read a label and there's lists of things you can't pronounce, you can't read as long as your arm. And it's just horrible what it has done to the health of people in this country.
I wanted you to talk about ginkgo. You have a golden grove of ginkgo trees.
Oh my word. I've been a ginkgo nut for forever. It was the early 70s. I was at Hugendorn Nursery in Newport, Rhode Island. That's where lots of the big wholesale nurseries are. And it was the Dutch that came over in the 20s that started these big nurseries, Hugendorn, Van Kemp, Van Veen. And George Gomes was taking me around, and I said, "Oh, wow, George, what's this tree? It's got a really unique leaf on it." He said, "Oh, that's the ginkgo. It's the oldest tree species on the planet." I said, "Wow, I need one." And ever since then, I've been totally bonkers over ginkgos, and I wrote a little book on it. And it is the oldest tree species on Earth, not the oldest plant. I think there's a pine somewhere that's 4,000 years old or something. It's the species. And it goes back like 350 million years. There were ginkgos on the planet, which then had the form of more of a fern, and then that became needled, and then the needles fused together. And if you look at a ginkgo leaf, you'll see these little lines in the leaf, and that was the prehistoric needles over geological time coming together to form a leaf. And it's just such an amazing plant. It's turning bright gold now as we speak. It has this funky quirk of dropping almost all its leaves on one day. And you go out the door in the morning, look at your ginkgo tree, you come back at night and it's naked. It's dropped all its leaves. That happened to me once here, looking out my window in the morning. I came back that evening. I looked out, whoa, wait a minute. So that's really interesting. It's one of two plants in the whole world that has motile sperm. They have a kinky sex life. They have no natural diseases, and bugs don't bother them. So I think that's another reason why it's lasted so many millions of years. It's an amazing tree, and to me, if you wanted to plant a tree to remember someone, Ginkgo is unquestionably the best memorial tree you could buy. If someone died, you have a wedding, you got a graduation, you got whatever, to memorialize that, you plant a ginkgo tree because I call it our connection with the eons, with all time. It's pretty magical.
My great uncle, Ben, he was a naturopathic doctor, and he had one tree in his yard, and it was a ginkgo. I remember thinking that it was the most magical thing I'd ever seen. I was just blown away by the leaves. And then, of course, we know a lot of Asian artwork uses the imagery of the
Absolutely.
leaves and the patterns. I've used it for earache, and I think I've used it for other things like tinnitus. Definitely used it for memory and mental clarity a lot in a lot of different formulas. I found it to be really, really useful. And it's funny because even a tiny little bit makes the formula taste bitter, but it's big medicine. Well worth it. There's nothing that replaces it. There's lots of herbs for
Best.
memory, but it's nothing is the same.
Yeah. And all you people out there, I'm inviting you, come to the farm and take as many ginkgo leaves as you want. What some herbalists and herbal extract companies do is they'll harvest the green leaves in, say, July, like the biggest plantation in the world is down in South Carolina, Garnet it's called. They harvest the first or second week in July, and you tincture it. And then in the fall, when their leaves are yellow, the constituents in the leaf are different. So you tincture that, and then you blend the two together and you get a broader spectrum. So come on down, bring a paper bag and harvest to your heart's content. I have so many ginkgo trees here. And please come and see them because they're in their, like you said, in their golden glory now. They're just coming into their glory. And then when a big wind comes along, a lot of them will just drop all those leaves. So got to have at least 80 or 90 ginkgo trees in pots that I'm selling, and I've got them on a wicked sale. The second plant is half price. So come and get a ginkgo tree and like I say, make a memorial tree from it.
And they've been associated with longevity, right?
Yeah, because the cerebral circulation gets your brain going. But you mentioned tinnitus and earaches and stuff. Well, of course, anytime you increase circulation to an area of the body, it's going to bring oxygen and nutriments and take away toxins. So it's absolutely helping that system through its circulatory encouraging properties.
So I have found that a lot of my clients and a lot of my friends and family are sleep deprived. We all know we have so much technology. The screens are competing for our attention, the buzz of the electronics, what's happening in the world, being stressful, wanting to have enough, like a work-life balance and put your work behind you and have time for yourself.
Right.
And that eats into sleep time. So, those are just some of the factors. And caffeine consumption, of course, for many of us. And of course, there's herbs that are really nice alternatives. Can you talk about sleep and what your thoughts are on improving it?
I'm going to tell you about a very interesting and nice experience I had. This had to have been 12 or 15 years ago. And I used to teach a lot of classes then, and I was teaching a class on the nervous system. And it was a beautiful day, and we were out in the gardens, and I decided that we'd have a tasting. So we took some chamomile, and we dug some valerian roots, and we had some lemon balm, and we did these tastings. So I'm teaching away and talking, and I noticed that a few of the students says, "I think I'm just going to lie down here and listen." And pretty soon, most of the class was so mellowed out, myself included. I could barely talk. I was so relaxed because of these herbs. And what it did is it told them firsthand experience, this is what nervine herbs can do. They relax and nourish the nervous system. And there it was, right in front of you. So yes, there are herbs like one of the best ever for sleep is hops. But you know, and I know that hops is very bitter. There, we're back to bitter again. Another one that's really good for mellowing you out and for raising your mood is lemon balm. Lemon balm is so easy to grow in your garden in an area of partial shade. Keep it moist, and it will just go and go and go and produce leaves. And that one is not bitter, it's yummy. And you take those leaves and rub them and smell them, and it puts you into heaven. It's fabulous. And the past 15 years or so, I've really been getting into mimosa blossoms. The mimosa tree, you may know, has those beautiful pink fuzzy blossoms in late June, early July, I think. And the Chinese in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, they've used the bark or maybe the inner bark of that for centuries for helping with raising the spirits a bit. And no one mentioned flowers, but when you go and to pick those flowers and you smell them, there's a reason why they call it the tree of heaven. It has this wonderful fragrance to it. So I start picking the very fresh flowers that just bloomed that day or the night before. Not the ones that are starting to wilt a little bit, but the very fresh ones. They're full of those essential oils, and I pick those and extract them into usually organic corn. Do we use corn now or cane sugar alcohol? Anyhow, it's organic. But sometimes a lot of herbalists, if they don't use vodka or grain alcohol, will use brandy because that's 40% alcohol. And I'll extract it into that. And almost every night now, I take a little squirt of the mimosa brandy under the tongue at bedtime to put you in a better frame of mind as you go off to sleep. And its taste is just heavenly. Another property of a lot of the nervine herbs is that they're antispasmodic. They relax the musculature. So now you're,
A good thing to keep in mind is that I think a lot of us walk around with, some muscle aches and pains or, pinched nerves, and then just general inflammation. And so all of those things can lead to being less comfortable. And then when we're going to sleep, that's when we go, oh, but, if we're not aware of it during the day, we might
yep.
be more aware of it at night. Tulsi is a really magical herb. I think you sell that too in your.
Oh yeah, we go through barrels of Tulsi.
Yeah.
Donna, my manager here, is just crazy about Tulsi. So that's a terrific one to make a tea of. And of course, it for the lungs, I love what I call the Three Musketeers. It's the pleurisy root, which is the first cousin to milkweed. So it has that milkweed pod, but it's a little smaller than the common. Asclepius is the botanical name of that, and Asclepius was the god of healing who learned his art from Chiron. Chiron was one of the original Titans with Gaia and Poseidon and Kronos and whatnot. But anyhow, vulgaris doesn't mean vulgar, it means common. So Asclepius vulgaris, common, is common milkweed. And this one is a pleurisy root or butterfly weed, some people call it, is Asclepius tuberosa. And it has these beautiful clusters of bright orange flowers in late summer, and the blossoms go for 5 weeks or so, which is far more than most plants. Azaleas, rhododendrons go 2, 3 weeks at the most, but this one blooms for a long time. I think pleurisy is a key herb for COVID, for getting the mucus out of the lungs in a COVID situation. The other ones I absolutely love elecampane, another very bitter. Pleurisy isn't that bitter, but elecampane is bitter. But
It's so dear to my heart. Campaign is just a
oh,
phenomenal herb.
it's not only decongesting, but it's antibacterial. So if you had lung conditions, you had a choice of an immune stimulant, most people will jump for echinacea. I would. Not with the lungs. I would much rather use elecampane than I would echinacea. The third musketeer is mullein. Mullein is that plant with a bluish green, fuzzy, great big leaves, and it puts up a tall spike with little yellow flowers on it.
And it's coming to a field near you, and it might be in your front yard, and you might be picking it.
It's a great one. So the combination of those three herbs, I think, are just terrific for the lungs. And most of them went into our COVID formula. They're in our optimum lung formula for bronchitis. And, when an upper respiratory goes down into the lungs, you're starting to get in trouble. Then you'd use the optimum lung. And then we have a formula called Lovely Lungs, which is just a tonic for the lungs to keep them decongested and energized and in a healthy condition, but not necessarily antibacterial. So we have those at least three lung formulas, which are good. And then if you've got the sore throat and the cough, oh man, you can't beat a plant called Osha root. Yeah. Osha is a type of lovage. It only grows in the West above 6,000 feet. It's a mountain plant, and it is just the best thing for sore throat and lung conditions, but especially the throat. And we use it in a formula I call Hack Attack, the high test behest to uncongest.
You wrote a book of poetry called Farewell, America the Beautiful. Let's hear a poem from that before we go.
Sap rising in a blessed sun. It's a little spicy. March moon waxes in a wide black sky, star-filled in lovers' dreams, and plant spirits sleeping, still burled and buried in gritty blankets, brown and black, roll in their roots. The slumbering soul glides skyward in a weave of dreams. The secret self and love swells in rooty cells, stirs the earth, moves in a myriad of wild and wanting thoughts, ascends the quickening stems, attends to April's aching air. Oh, here as desire draws near as the knee, the pinions shiver, shudder, and a rage of procreation. Oh, hear me, slaves of desire, slaves of sweet nature's knee-weak nectar, and now, licentious yearning, turning toward May, now in waning April, remembering May, forthcoming, forthcoming toward May. Oh, God, we adore this rite of spring. We ache in this passion, this sap rising in a blessed sun. In our secret heart, we are the flower. We are the stamen, the pistil, the ovary wall glistening, sticky embrace of the bee, the seed that swells, the silky rush towards heaven. Oh, April, oh, here, oh, God, oh, here as desire draws near as the knee, this rage, this rush, sweet nectar coming forth, coming toward May. Oh, how we obsess in this rite of spring, how we ache in this passion, this trembling, this mad sap rising in a blessed sun. That's all about spring.
Oh, it's beautiful. That's great. Thank you so much, Stephan Brown, for joining us today. Folks can go to greatcape.com or find you at Great Cape Herbs behind the Snowy Owl on your farm. Your books, Ginkgo and Farewell America the Beautiful, are available there, and so much more. You've been listening to Healing Wisdom at Outermost Radio. All of our shows are podcasts at WOMR.org. Also check out HealingWisdomRadioshow.com and contact me at Pandora@WOMR.org.